Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Second Shot All American Golf Podcast. I am your host, Tom. As always, joined here by my co host and 3-time HCAC Player of the Week, Mr. Philip Gilmore. Phil, how are we doing today?
Good, Tom. Thanks for digging that up. That What an honor.
You're welcome. You're welcome. How you doing today?
Good. Wish the weather would make up its mind, but we're going to get through that, and it's a wonderful time of the year.
It is. And for the record, we're recording this not mid-March. Yeah, mid-March. And as you know, March is crazy here in Cincinnati in terms of the weather. So today's episode, we're talking about a former employer of ours, Phil, Cincinnati Country Club. I'm excited. We're
Absolutely.
talking about the course renovation that they've had out at Cincinnati. It's I'm just so excited to see. I've seen a bunch of videos. I've seen a bunch of the drone shots, things like that they've had. I am more than excited to see what they're going to reveal when the course opens up here.
Absolutely. And it's also safe to say it's been 13 years since our employment there,
Yeah,
and a lot has happened in those 13 years. So excited to hear about the changes going on.
no kidding, no kidding. Well, before we bring in our guest for that, Phil, you have our random golf fact today. The floor is yours.
I do. I'm going to take time to talk about our guests a little bit and the facility and club that they represent. So, a little bit of history about Cincinnati Country Club. Thomas Mack, a representative of a metals company, moved to Cincinnati from Scotland and interested a group that included Nicholas Longworth, Charles Hinkle, and Edmund Harrison in the Scottish game. Together in 1893, they laid out a 5-hole course and then a 9-hole course on Edwards and Grandin Roads in the suburb called East Walnut Hills. Many others joined them, and future U.S. President William Howard Taft, then a local judge, was named the first chairman of the Cincinnati Golf Club in 1895. The members immediately began a search throughout the city and northern Kentucky for a suitable site for their permanent course. The next year, they hired Robert White, a professional from Scotland, to run the operation, and he laid out a new 9-hole course farther up Grandin Road, and then expanded the course to 18 holes in 1897. When Cincinnati Country Club was organized in 1902, it built a beautiful clubhouse at the site seen today at the course. CCC also owned the former dairy farm where the CGC course was situated and then continued their lease so play and improvements could continue for the golfing members. The golf property had its own small improvised clubhouse that included an annex in the back for chickens. It also served as a shelter house for caddies, a stable for horses, and other varied needs until eventually replaced in 1916. During that time, buckets of water were brought in for bathing and lighting was from oil lamps and candles. Play was on what appeared to be 40 acres of hopeless hazard, and it would be a few years before players could clear all the brush, plant seed, and rid themselves of dairy cows until or still grazing on the property. The Cincinnati Country Club and Cincinnati Golf Club eventually merged in 1924 after a tenuous relationship that included a threat by CGC to move to Mount Washington. The merger was a welcomed relief for those who were members at both clubs. During this early period, Cincinnati Golf Club was the main communication between the city and the rest of the golfing world. Matches were arranged with country clubs in St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Chicago, and Columbus. The members would board trains for their matches and either spend the night or take a night train back home. Then the club would return the favor and host their opponents. Nationally, the game was spreading quickly as more clubs were being formed, and the competitive nature of the game lent itself into matches between clubs and cities. In 1900, the great Harry Vardon visited for an exhibition match with former club professional Bob White and local amateurs. During that visit, Varden set a new course record of 66 at CGC. He had already won 3 British Opens by then and would add a U.S. Open title later in 1900. In a day when a 200-yard drive was memorable, which Tom and I can relate to, Varden would hit his tee shot 240 yards with the old hickory shafts and the new Spalding golf balls he was representing. Endorsement deals started early in the game of golf. Varden would return in later years, along with Ted Ray and other famous golfers of that era, and Bobby Jones and many other great players were frequent visitors to the Grandin Road links. That first main 18-hole course was built on 90 acres and totaled about 3,800 yards. In those days, the holes each bore a name. So Walnut Grove, which was former hole 6, paralleled today's, or was yesterday's, hole number 2 and measured 333 yards. The other hole names included Hyde Park Corner, Esperanza, The Alp, and Rookwood. The course expanded to about 4,800 yards in 1908 when more property was added north to Observatory Road. Some of those holes are similar to the present layout, with a couple of the familiar tee shots across Bedford Avenue. The course would go through another major redesign in 1925, and that effort was led by member Harold W. Nichols, who expanded the routing to 5,900 yards. The course has always provided many challenging shots to the small greens, where chipping, pitching, and putting skills were especially needed. In the 1960s, property acquisitions expanded the course close to its present configuration, and from a single clay flower pot sunk into the turf on Grandin Road in 1895 for Hole 1, the city had its first and oldest golf facility firmly in place, and a membership that would persevere and continue to build the game in Cincinnati. And that's where I will stop today's random golf fact, and that is from Golf Reaches the Seven Hills by our good friend Gary Lanham.
There's a lot to take in there, Phil.
Yeah, great stuff.
I love hearing about the history of this place, man.
I know there's so much history, and there's still more history being made. So
Absolutely.
we're going to go ahead and bring in our guests today and talk about it. So our two guests today joining us. First of all, we do have the director of grounds, Mr. Tony Weaver. And then our other guest today, a former boss of ours, Phil. He played golf at a Duquesne University, runner-up finish at the 1992 A10 Conference Championship. How about that? He has Southern Ohio PGA Awards, the 2018 PGA Professional or Golf Professional of the Year, 2006 Professional Development Award, the 2005 and 2015 Bill Strauss Ball Award for Community Relations. If I mispronounced that name, I am very sorry. And he was a head professional at Heritage Club before moving to Cincinnati Country Club as the head pro in 2010. And then after 9 years as the head pro, he moved into his current role as the general manager and chief operating officer at Cincinnati Country Club. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Joe Zinchini and Tony Weaver. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
If you could, we'll start with Joe. Joe, could you talk about a little bit more about kind of what your role is with the club and kind of what you do for the club?
Sure. So it's, as I mentioned a little bit ago, it's really special to be on with you two, especially that you're alumni of the club, and I think I'm getting old. I'm looking at you guys now, and you used to work on our golf staff. So my role is a very traditional, general manager role here at the club, meaning I'm responsible for all the daily activities in all departments. Ultimately responsible. I have some amazing people that work for me that run those departments, but a big part of my role is overseeing the daily operations and working very closely with our board of governors, our club president, all the financials of the club, strategic planning of the club, and really probably my most important role, which is trying to make sure that we're giving our membership every single day a wonderful experience. That's really what makes us tick and what drives me every day.
Perfect. And Tony, can you talk a little bit about your position as director of grounds, what that entails?
Sure. And thanks, guys, for having us on. This is a pretty special time here at the club with the golf course renovation and opening this spring. So my role here started as golf course superintendent as we hired, and we have two great assistants that work under me, Brian Frost and Isaac Santel. So they have taken a big part in helping with the golf course, my duties on the golf course, so we can expand and help other departments and the rest of the grounds here at the club. from 7 clay tennis courts to building maintenance. Front lawn, our front lawn is bent grass. We maintain that as same as the golf course. All our flowers, tree work, the entire grounds of the club we're responsible for. So it's a big job, but it's not the traditional golf course superintendent role. So it's an honor to be at the club and have the responsibility of maintaining the entire facility.
And Tony, how long have you been with the club?
I came here in 2018, and I came from Coldstream Country Club before that.
Sure. Okay. This question could go for both of you. I mean, Tony, you've been there for going on 8 years now, but Joe, especially you've been there for, I guess, I don't know, 16 years or so.
Yeah.
Could you can you talk about the kind of the evolution of the club over the years that you've been there, kind of some of the changes that you've seen? Not necessarily, we obviously know the renovation and everything like that, but just talk about the club in general over the last 16 years.
Yeah, I'd say it's been amazing. And particularly from my point of view, coming from the golf professional role, to the general manager role, the club absolutely has evolved. The membership has evolved. One thing that makes us really, really strong is the generations of members here, and the longevity of our staff. But I give the governance of the club a lot of credit, from the standpoint of looking at the big picture, looking at the future, thinking strategically on growing the membership, advancing all the capital around the club. Obviously the golf course renovation was a big one, but prior to the golf course renovation, we've really just finished up a 5-year strategic plan, which touched all areas of the club. And so, it started with our pool, and we've slowly worked our way around. And so that's been really critical because, in today's market, the club environment's very competitive. The industry is very healthy, thank goodness. And so, the foresight that they had to think about, okay, we have to change, we have to evolve, we have to remain relevant, we have to continue to attract members. I think was critical because the like any club, right? If you're not bringing in new members, you're not keeping your dues healthy, you're not bringing in youth. You can get really stagnant, really behind the times very, very quickly. So yeah, it's been what made it interesting here was, it's a very traditional club. And so the challenge was, and still is, you know, evolving it, respecting our history, knowing what we are, who we are, not trying to be anybody else, but really looking at how we can provide the best opportunity and best experience for the members of the club. So yeah, it's been amazing to be a part of that and to watch that happen around the facility. And same with our team. We had a lot of staff members who just retired. Folks that were here for 20, 30, 40 years. We had a chef retire last year who was here for 31 years, and my predecessor, Mr. O'Callaghan, was here for 40 years. And it's really special. I think that really speaks to the culture of the place. If you look around and you talk to a lot of the staff that's here, a lot of us have been here for a very long time. So we've also evolved from that standpoint, which was challenging, right? When you have a 31-year chef and a 40 plus year general manager retire, it's really important that when you're going through that transition, you're keeping in mind the culture of the place and importance of those roles. And Tony was a great example. I mean, saying we had a superintendent that had here for a long time before him, and Tony came in and really took over and has modernized our maintenance practices and our facilities. And so yeah, it's been an exceptional journey to be on.
Yeah, Tom and I were discussing prior to this when we were at the employees at the club. The biggest focus was on renovating the practice range and the short game practice facility. So you go from that point, and now you're at the point you're at now. I mean, you've touched every base.
That's a great point, Phil, because there's a really good example. Our practice facility, we really didn't have much of one, like a lot of old clubs. And when that practice facility was built, it was built and opened, I think, 2 years before I got here as the golf professional. And and one of the reasons we just renovated it as part of this, what we did to the golf course, we've outgrown it. The usage, um, of that driving range facility, like a lot of clubs, it's just, if you could track driving range usage, it almost might be double what play is, because a lot of people have, you can get your golf fix, if you will, right, by that hour or so on the driving range. So there was another great example of why we moved kind of in the direction of what we needed to do with the golf facilities.
And you were talking about a strategic 5-year plan. When did the golf course renovation kind of come up on the radar at first?
It's funny. We were just Tony and I were just talking about this last week. We it was what, 4 years ago when we first.
October of 2021.
Yeah. So kind of the way it evolved was, we had a very, very old irrigation system, um, and we needed to replace it. It had just become, unrepairable, frankly. And anyone that understands turf at Tony's level understands, that's maybe one of the most critical components is proper irrigation, right? And so our irrigation system needed replaced. We had aging bunkers. We had aging cart paths. And so really the whole thing started with, we have to do these major infrastructure things to the golf course, just like, we do around the rest of the facility. And so as part of that process, we knew, okay, we're going to need to hire an architect to do this properly, right? We need to understand how the irrigation needs to be laid out, and we need to understand, bunker design. What we didn't want was, to piecemeal it together. We wanted to do it right. And ultimately, as we talked about it on the board level, we wanted to have, much like we do for the rest of the club, we wanted to have a master plan for the golf course, one that future boards, future managers, future director of grounds could follow, right? So that we could maintain the integrity of the property. And so that led us to, interviewing architects, um, which led us to, you know, what could this property be? We know we have to do bunkers, irrigation, and cart paths, but you know, um, why don't you come to us with a plan for doing that? But also, why don't you come to us with a plan that let's dream a little bit and let's see what we could do with the facility.
I guess could you walk us through a little bit of what the approval process looks like? I assume there's got to be some type of a vote, and then when
Mhm.
did it officially become? When did you officially choose an architect, and when did you officially start going forward with the project?
Yeah. So, and Tony, you're going to have to help me a little bit about this with this, but so once we knew we had to do the basic infrastructure changes to the golf course, so 4 years ago, Tony came to us with recommendations on architects, and they were all wonderful. We were really fortunate to talk to the folks that we spoke with, um, and so it was, I guess, about 3.5, 4 years ago when we decided on Dr. Michael Hurdzan,
Mhm.
and and then that kind of started that was the domino effect that kind of started things going. And so once we had, Mike's, as he would say, the basic plan for bunkers, irrigation, cart pass, and then in his words, the crazy plan. In fact, he tells a great story driving down here with his son, Dr. Chris Hurdzan, of, hey, we'll show them both plans, And when we show them the crazy plan, they may politely ask us to get back in our cars and drive back to Columbus. And in fact, it was just the opposite. When we saw, his crazy plan, we all kind of looked around the room at each other, and it was definitely a wow moment. So once we knew that we had this incredible opportunity to, parlay with what we already needed to do with maybe a complete, and we don't use the word renovation. It's more of a what's
Transformation.
it's more of a transformation, right? Because when you talk about restoration, or renovation in particular, this was really a massive project. We moved 200,000 cubic feet of dirt in this project. So this wasn't us changing a few holes. This wasn't us just doing bunkers. I mean, we literally touched everything and every blade of grass, and it was major. Um, so once we identified the plan and the board felt really strongly about the plan, then yes, the next step was to go to the membership and say, hey, it's your club. This is what our opportunities are, and we had, we started getting communications out to the membership about what we needed to do and what we might do. But really, when it all came together, um, I guess was in the very early summer of 2023, and Dr. Hurdzan came here and we did a town hall. And it was absolutely standing room only, in the clubhouse, and Mike presented, his vision for the golf course to the membership, and then we put it out to vote immediately after that, and we had a wonderful turnout in the vote, and we had 93% approval. And so we really went into the project with, we felt, a wonderful architect, a wonderful plan, strong backing from the membership, you know, an amazing, and I mean this amazing, director of grants and superintendent, and Tony and his crew, and a great committee of the board to work with. So, it really was kind of, from my perspective as the manager of the club, it was an amazing team assembled with amazing support and an amazing architect. So, and it was really, and then the final piece of the puzzle was securing the contractor, right? And so that was a little tough because the good contractors are booking years ahead. And so, we had to quickly make a decision, on an architect, and then after that we had to quickly make a decision on the contractor. And you're a little bit held by the contractors' schedules, frankly. In particular with the industry, clubs investing so much in their golf capital right now. But we again, it was like the stars and the moon aligned, because we ended up working with the Aston Corporation, which is out of West Virginia, and they were an amazing partner in this whole thing too. And so, I don't know how, honestly, it could have come together any better than it did, for it being the size and scope of the project that it was.
I think it's very interesting you guys chose Dr. Hurdzan. He's got a very decorated background himself, so for him to be able to transform a golf course like Cincinnati Country Club and just have that connection of such a decorated background, I think is really neat. Can you tell us a little bit about what was it? Because Hurdzan's done a lot of work within this region of the country. Was there a certain type of work that you've seen or that you researched that drew you to him?
Well, initially, Tony, that was one of the names he brought to us, and Tony should speak to this also. But from my standpoint, what really made us, we felt like a good match for Dr. Hurdzan was, he came into the presentation. He understood who we are, what we wanted to do. The his vision was not to come in and take out every oak tree and clear out the property. You know, it was anything but that. It was actually to preserve the specimen trees. You know, he had some history with us. He visited the club in the early '80s and had talked to the club back then about doing, you know, at that time it would have been a renovation to the golf course, and the club decided not to do anything for whatever reason, probably because it was a big inconvenience, you know, to the membership, which it certainly is. But you know, if you know Dr. Hurdzan's work, you know he's worked with some big name courses. Obviously, he's you know he designed and built Erin Hills, where they've had the men's and women's U.S. Opens, and you know, so we just felt like he was a great match for us. Um, Meaning really truly understanding who we are. And Tony, you should elaborate on that.
I think it was an easy decision when Mike starts talking. I mean, he's a great historian of the game and of clubs to start. And you know, he didn't have to come in here. And Joe said it best. He understood Cincinnati Country Club and our great history, and he didn't have to come in here and make a name for himself. You know, he is Dr. Michael Hurdzan, and um, he can build a course around your facility and your culture without having to throw stuff out there to wow people and make it put his name out there. He's out there. People know him, and he just is so respectful of the club and its members and employees. I mean, he treats Joe and I like family. It's he's just a great person. You know, his son Chris, exactly the same. They're just great to work with, and they just have a lot of respect for the culture in the club that is already here.
Yeah, it was an absolute joy to work with those guys. I mean, they are salt of the earth people. Um, you know, Mike is just out in the dirt every single time he was here. Visited, basically weekly, um, and just willing to listen and open to ideas. And yeah, he wasn't coming in here trying to like I said, make a name for himself. There's no trickery to the golf course. I mean, it's just good classic design that when it's maturing, but once it mature, I mean, it's going to feel like it's been here for as long as the club's been here. Because of the way he worked the golf course and the look and the feel, and then you add in the 130-year-old oak trees that are throughout the golf course. And so yeah, I mean, he really did an amazing job with really, as you mentioned early in the intro, it's a very challenging property. I think that's one of the also the other things that really made this attractive to Mike was it's not a flat piece of land, right? So there were a lot of architectural challenges here, and I'm sure Mike's you know Mike's doing what projects he wants to do at this stage of his life. He's not an up and comer. He's the guy that's writing the books, right? And so I think personally, I think he really felt like the challenge of the topography was probably really fun for him to work with.
I bet. Even on the driving range, I remember picking the driving range, and it was on like the one side near 11, and you're like tilted, and you feel like you're about to like tip over sometimes.
You didn't want to be that guy.
No, you did not. You definitely did not want to do that.
Hopefully I wasn't giving you guys a hard time at the time about picking the driving range.
No.
So if I did, thanks for being kind to me today.
Sure, of course. Well, I would love to talk about the course. I mean, in terms of what are some of the holes that I feel like, I know you've said kind of the whole course has been touched, but what are some of the holes that kind of stand out for you the most? And for me, immediately starting out, number one stands out to me. I think, kind of the movement of the hole. And I'm curious if you guys could talk a little bit further about all that.
Yeah. And so Tony and I can tag team this, but yeah, I mean, we literally, every hole changed. One's a great example where the hole was lengthened
338
yeah,
yards to
to
440.
410 or something like that from the back tee now. So it was lengthened significantly. There's a great example where Hurdzan was so brilliant. We stood out in the middle of that first fairway, and we'd always thought, well, we could push that green more towards Bedford Road. And, we stood out kind of at the landing area from the tee shot. And Mike said, guys, it's already here. There's 2 trees here that we need to remove. But if you look at the terrain, this is a natural dog leg to the right, and we can put the tee, or the green rather, down where the old second tee used to be. And not only will it take the blindness out of the hole, we'll extend it. And as you get over your second shot, you'll now be looking, imagine now playing your second shot on our first hole. It's a downhill second shot. Not severely, but it does, and it looks like it's always been there. So one was a massive change. What you'll appreciate it when you see it, but holes 2 and 7, we took 20 feet out of those fairways. They were lowered by 20 feet. So those are saddled fairways now. And what that did was, when you get over your second shot now on those par 5s, you actually can see the green complexes. Um, you know, um, 5 and 6, massive changes. The routing of 5 completely changed. So it's a much more approachable green. And then he took our 6th hole, which was a long par 3 that played about 225, and it's now a par 4. And so he, and it's probably going to be one of the most talked about holes, I think, Tony. But because it's a risk reward drivable par 4. So ideally, depending on what tee you're playing from, but if you're playing the back tees, you're going to want to hit it about 200 to 220 yards, which gets you to the landing area. There's an amazing bunker complex that's on the left side of the hole, but kind of cuts into the middle of the hole. So if you want to try to drive the green, you're either going to thread the needle up the right side, or you're going to try to carry it 270 over that bunker complex. But if you get in the bunker complex, you can't see the green. And so, big change, on that hole. Probably about 12 was a huge change for us. It's now one gigantic connected fairway. It's no more split fairway. The green was lowered 10 feet, I
10
think.
feet.
10, we took out the pond. There's no longer a pond on 10. And the reason for that was it added, how much do we add to 10?
80
Yeah,
yards.
we added about, so imagine 9 and 10 are going to be, 2 of the better back-to-back par 5s, I think, or par 4s rather, excuse me, that you'll play anywhere. But, removing the pond and rerouting that fairway and opening up the sight lines, and, you could see the entire hole now. And so 10 and 12 were big ones. And then our finishing hole, 17 and 18, completely changed, completely moved. Our 18th hole now is a wonderful finish. Big, generous fairway that's rolling and kind of meanders, down the hole, and makes it into a slight dogleg to the left. And, has he put a beautiful chipping area off the left side of the green that used to be bunkers. And then the front right bunker is probably our most penal on the course, I think. At least Mike thinks it's going to be the most penal, but that green is just massive now. And yeah, so I think when, whenever you all have a chance to come out and see it, especially since you understand the course before, it's kind of, this was a long answer, and I'm sorry, but there was just so many holes. And Tony, I mean, what
Yeah, I think the
what do you
one
think?
hole that we kind of skipped over, and I think it would be fun to see if people even notice. If you guys remember, the old number 4 had a block retaining wall by the tee, which was terrible. That's gone. But we actually raised 4 green by 16 feet. So now you stand up above observatory and look down to observatory. We had to build a retaining wall to build that green up. But with Mike's great architecture, we kept the 2 huge oak trees, and the green is now sitting in between those, all the way back against the fence of observatory. So not only did we add 40 yards, but where the old nursery used to be, if you guys remember that or anybody remembers that, that's where the green is now. So you added 40 yards to the hole, and it's up above the fence from observatory. So it looks, with those trees there, it looks like it's been there forever. But so it'll be interesting to see how if people actually realize what we did there to that hole. And I think that's what he did on a lot of holes. Subtle changes, moving green complexes over 10 or 12 yards to left or right. 16 green was lowered by 12 feet and moved over 10 yards to the left. So it's a more straightaway hole. We lowered it down so that second shot wasn't a weird straight uphill shot. 5 green, that was, everybody probably agrees was the worst green on the course, is now a beautiful new green, which is connected to 3 green now. So 3 and 5 green is now a complex. 8 and 10 green is now a greens complex. So all the neat changes. I just can't wait for the members to walk off for the first time, and it's going to take them 2 or 3 times playing it to realize just everything that has been done to this golf course. It's really a true transformation. It is not the same golf course.
It's great too because from the playability standpoint, depending on which tee you play, he has brilliantly positioned the forward tees, right? Because our goal was a really beautiful, fun, playable golf course for all ability levels. The farther back you go, the more challenging it becomes. The more up on the tees that you go, the hazards are less in play. And so our objective, other than to, do what we needed to do, was to keep the members playing golf at Cincinnati Country Club for years, right? And so it's just really brilliant how, in fact, Mike would say it all the time, if his 100-year-old mother could play the hole from those forward tees and enjoy it, then he would say, I've done my job. And that was, I'll tell you, that was something that I probably didn't mention earlier, but that was one thing that we loved about Mike too, is he understood not only from Tony's perspective as the person that has to maintain the golf course, but he also looked at it from the point of view of, we want to keep people playing golf and enjoying the game here for a very long time. So it wasn't about making the golf course miserably hard. He understands that, we wanted it, our vision and the club's vision was to make it a member golf course and fun and playable and enjoyable for, no matter who you are.
Yeah, Tom and I always talk about our time being able to play there on Mondays and just the charm that he and I just saw in the golf course. I don't know if you guys want to talk about this or not, but was there a certain hole that was your favorite on the old course? And is there a certain hole that you think will become your new favorite going into the transformation?
Awesome. Why don't you talk first, since I'm always talking?
um, I think that the 2 best holes on the course now that went from 0 to 100 are 1 and 18. I mean, our old starting hole was kind of a dud. Blind second shot, 60 yards. Nobody wants to start like that. And then the finishing hole, where it should be one of your best holes, you'd hit a great drive and it would roll off into the right side rough. And, even if you hit a great drive down the fairway, it would end up in the rough, or it's kind of blind on your second shot. But now, I mean, our number 1 hole is, I will say, one of the best in town. I think it's just a beautiful opening hole. It starts you off wonderful. It's generous. So even if you're not feeling your first drive, you can still get to the green in 2. And then the closing hole, just walking up the new fairway, is really special. It's got a real, just classic golf feel walking into the clubhouse, and seeing the huge American flag on your left and the clubhouse, and it's just a nice feel of walking off. We've brought in some native grass areas that frame in the holes now, that make it feel really old school. It's just framed so nicely, and the new bunkering is classic. There's nothing hokey about the course. It's just a straightforward, truly classic golf course. And the holes that were a little weird before, like number 5 and 16, stand out. where your second shots are straight up blind shots. We've now lowered them all into new greens, new bunkering. It just flows so well. You know, before you could tell the golf course was built somewhat in the 50s, then the 60s, then the 70s, then the 90s. You know, but it's such a really true flowing golf course now. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, good. Those are good thoughts. And you know, for me, that one of my I think is a sleeper hole was always number 3. You know, it's a short dogleg left par 4, and probably because the shot shape that I play is right to left, right? So right to left holes to me are always, you know, my eye just always likes them. But that one I always thought was really a neat hole because it's way more uphill than you think. And you don't realize it till you get up there and look back at it. But what Mike did there, I'm sure you guys will remember there was a bunker on the right side of the hole. So that bunker is now gone, and the bunker is there's an awesome fairway bunker on the left side of the hole now. And what he did was he shifted the hole and made it more of a dog leg left around that big fairway bunker on the left with a big generous landing area. But what I think is so neat about the hole too, if you hit it to the right of that bunker, you'll see all of the green. But if you hit it short of the bunker, you know, you'll see the flag, but not the green. And there's nothing behind the green. So depth perception wise, you know, it's one of those holes, it's really going to make you think what's back there. What you don't see is that there's a chip off area back there. And then he expanded the right side of the green a little bit and then put basically a horseshoe bunker around the right side of the green. And then, like Tony said, it's connected to 5. And so when you stand out in that fairway, it's just a hole that you have to really think about driver placement, you know, and if you don't know the course, what's behind that green if I hit it long? You know, it's not a long hole, but it's, you know, I think it's really, really beautiful. And the other one to me that I've always liked, but now I think is absolutely magnificent, is if you guys will remember our 15th hole, the par 3 over the road. And what he did there, you know, we well, first of all, it's a map, it's a very old school, very long, massive one big tee now. And the hillside on both sides of Bedford is all now our native Scottish fescue. And then he took the green, and the green's twice as big, at least, than what it used to be. And he rotated it. It used to be, as you played the hole, it was kind of a long oval. He actually turned it, put a fairway area in there, and then a really cool greenside bunker on the left. So, and there's a ton of green behind that bunker on the left, but when you stand on the tee, it looks like there's no green behind that bunker. So if you put a back left flag there, you know, it's really gonna be challenging. But it's absolute. I think Mike said this. I think he thinks either 6 or 15, you know, will become our signature holes because they're just very unique. And that one on a small scale resembles the hole at LA Country Club. Now theirs is longer, but they have a road hole over, you know, a par 3 over the road. I think theirs plays closer to 200 yards. And I know Mike has done some work at LA Country Club at one point in time, but it reminded him of that hole on a shorter scale. But I think when you guys see it, you're going to be like, wow, because you can stand on the tee now and see the whole green complex. And then, you know, and it's all framed in around the left side with the native fescue, and there's a runoff chip off area, and it's really neat what he did, you know, design there wise. So it'll definitely be, I think, be one of those ones where visually, you know, if you've never played the course, it'll be one that you'll remember when you stand there, and you know, look at that hole because it's very unique.
Yeah, Tom knows 15 has always been my favorite hole out there. I just so charming. Loved it.
Yeah, can't wait for you to see it. It's really it's like he took it and he just made it absolutely magnificent. We're so excited about it.
And we could go on and on.
Yeah, I can. I really.
So one quick last one, 17, for guys that know the big valley that was in between 17 and 16.
Sure.
We removed all of those oak trees. So now the new number 17 is a straight hole down through that valley, and a brand new green sits up in the hill where the old irrigation boxes used to be. There's some there to the right of or left of the old 17 green. So it's a straightaway. We filled in that valley almost 20 feet. We brought it up almost 20 feet to fill in that valley and create a brand new, never been played hole before. So it was pretty special to create a space that was kind of useless and just treed and kind of a divider between holes, and now it's a brand new hole.
The other thing we haven't talked about either is where the old first green used to be. We had all this space. We had an acre of ground over there, and if you remember, there was nothing behind that first green at all. And so as we got very, very late in the project, because the first hole was so significantly changed, we had an acre of ground over there, and we kind of brainstormed on what to do with it. And so the committee decided we would put in really a first class short game area. So you have a 9,000 square foot Himalayan putting green there now, and then you have a wedge area where you have 2 target greens. You have a bunker, a sand bunker. You have grass bunkers. You have grass swales for fairway. You have grass swales for rough. You have an area where you can hit 50-yard wedge shots. And so we've got this whole short game complex now that really, just complements our new practice facility. But again, just something we wanted to do something unique, to the club that we didn't think anyone else really had.
Spectacular. I love to hear that. I'm curious, and this is probably more of a question for Tony. Can you talk about maybe some of the setbacks that the weather has presented, maybe for this project? I mean, I know last year in general we had so much rain; it was so humid. I'm curious how that impacts a transformation, as you guys call it, to the course. I'm curious how that impacts that.
Yeah, so the rain and weather were our biggest issue by far. Um, for those that don't know, we literally rounded up and killed the entire golf course wall to wall, except for greens. So every bit of Cincinnati Country Club was dirt, except for these little green emeralds all around the golf course that we actually had to keep alive by using water trucks because we didn't have any irrigation system from all the cuts and fills that we were doing. So when we started off in July of 24. July of 24, and went through 3 or 4 months of drought, which we had complaints about. Which the dust, our poor neighbors, which we thank all the time, they were so supportive. I mean, from the dust going around their houses, then turning into mudslides. It was crazy, but the drought helped us at the beginning because we had enough water trucks to keep our greens alive, and we were moving so much dirt. And we had highway trucks, the Hydrema highway trucks. We had 4 of those out on our golf course for 8 months, moving dirt. 200,000 cubic yards of dirt were moved in 8 months. Like Joe said, we had anywhere from a 12-foot cut to a 21-foot cut out of our fairways. So once you have all that exposed dirt and then a 3-inch rain comes, we were shut down for weeks. We couldn't move. Our drainage system, we did a lot of new drainage, but no matter how much we covered up drain lids with straw bales or wattles or the inserts that you can use, they were just overwhelmed. We consistently had to bring out crews in the evenings when rain was happening and clear out drains, and then wait for it to. We lost all of our topsoil 6 times off the course. We had 6 major rain events. Annual rainfall is 42 inches. That year we had 58 inches. So we struggle. We reseeded fairways 3 and 4 times. We would hydro seed a couple holes a day and then lose all of it in one rain event. So the rain was was just it was a nightmare. Unless you're out here and you know the undulation and how much topography we have. I mean, 80 foot difference in elevation. When you have zero grass to stop water, it is it's just a sight you can't do anything about it. We tried silt fencing. We had triple silt fencing through some of the middles of our fairways. We still lost it. Then we tried to sod hillsides and areas, but the rain would get underneath it and push it all down to the bottom of the hills. So um, it was a real challenge. I mean, this is we rain and weather probably set us back 6 months total, or added 6 months to our project.
Tony, this one's also for you. You talked about a little bit just what you had to do to clear out drains and such. Some people may think, the course is being completely renovated. Your job, you have no job. Tell us about the cooperation that you had to have with the architect team and with the contractors. What did your daily job look like during that time?
So at the beginning of this, we knew a budget that we wanted to stay around. And in order to get there, we knew that our crew had to take on certain tasks to meet, that financial goal to get everything done. We didn't want to cut anything out. So um, my background is as an arborist. Obviously, we signed on for all the tree work. So we did all the tree work in house um, the season before we started. And then we also signed up for laying all the sod. We did all of the fertilizer applications after the soil was prepped by Aspen. We did all the hydro seed. We basically did the entire grassing of the golf course except for the sod on the 11 new greens that were built. So um, we we basically saved. We think we saved the club between $2 and $2.5 million of what the grounds crew uh, did in house. But day to day, I'll never forget it. And my phone has never gone off so much. We had 60 people here from Aspen every day. So they had a crew of 60 plus our crew of 25. Um, the bouncing back and forth and answering questions every 15 minutes on different sides of the golf course was unbelievable. Finding things that were dug up from the 50s or the 60s. We had to trace wires that we didn't know were there, trace drain lines that we didn't know were there to see if they were still being used. If we had to hook them into new basins or abandon them. It was every single day was a new challenge. I mean, the learning on the fly. I've told Joe that you just had to make decisions every single day. Um, and my two assistants are amazing assistants. Um, I counted on them a lot to watch Aspen's crew and keep them in line. You know, everybody shortcuts something or tries, this will work. So my assistants were in charge of watching the irrigation company, the construction company, just keeping everything rolling smooth and making decisions. And, we were quality control. Basically, we got the tree work done for them to be able to start. And then we just followed right behind them with all the grassing, seeding, hydro seeding, and sodding right behind the construction company.
That sounds like it's just a lot of work. I mean, I'm very, very impressed. Like I said, that sounds tough, especially the weather. Like I said, that rain last year was truly unbelievable. Just kind of wrapping this up. I'm curious, did the par of the course and the yardage change? I assumed the yardage had to have changed. I don't know if you guys have exact numbers, but from the back tees, I mean, is the the par different and the yardage different?
Yes, we're now par 71 because of the change on the sixth hole.
Right.
Round number 6,500.
Yeah, we gained about 200
Yeah,
yards.
about 200 yards. From the backs, and yeah, I think what's what I think that I mentioned earlier, but I really believe what the design does is it will challenge a really good player from the back tees. But if you're newer to the game or you're just not a novice player, it's going to be a really enjoyable golf experience for everybody, from front to back on all those tees and everything in between. Assuming, excuse me, assuming that you're playing the right tees, which I know a lot of golfers don't do, unfortunately. But um, yeah, it changed, and we're, the tough part about us is, we're so locked. We're surrounded by Grandin Observatory and Madison and all the homes in the community, and we're kind of like a little oasis here in the city. And so it's not like we had, 250 acres to work with here. I mean, we only had
126 acres.
26 acres, and that's everything. So so yeah, that was challenging,
And we used every square inch.
and we used every square inch. Yeah. Yeah. By the way, Tony was being a little bit modest there. He did everything that he said, but he also was really the project facilitator in all this. He and that was a big trust um, that he had earned from all of us, me and the board, and because we knew it was going to get done right, and he and the crew, our crew, just amazing what they do. Really, the perseverance through. I'll never forget that we had that hurricane. Um, we got like, I don't know, 6 inches of rain in like 3 hours, and I've got some photos of Tony, up to his knees in mud and water, barricading things off so it didn't affect the neighbors, property. And so yeah, these guys were amazing.
Terrific job for both of you. My last question is, how does this set you guys up for the next 25 to 50 years?
Well, I think it's interesting because we've talked a lot about that. I think what it does is, it puts our golf course on par with the rest of the facilities, at the club. Um, I think probably most importantly, it's going to be here for, generations way after us, to enjoy. Um, and for me as a, as a still a PGA member, that's, my love for the game is deep and has been since I was 10 years old. And, that's a really, really neat thing to think about, that long after Tony and I retire, and the current board, is gone, and whatever, future generations of the club are going to enjoy that golf course. And, it's kind of strange to think about that, there'll be a day when I'll drive past this place, and maybe with my grandchildren, and explain that, I had a big part in putting the golf course to where it is today. So, and it's I don't take that lightly. This is a really cool old place, and we wanted it to still feel that way. And so in the beginning, we even talked a little bit about, when we did some of our videos, we called it a new old course. And I think that's where Mike did, such a great job. But yeah, it's going to be neat to see people enjoy this for a long time.
Couldn't agree more. It's a spectacular club, and Phil and I absolutely enjoyed working there. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Can't wait to have you all come back and see the golf course. I think you guys will, so you got to give me a shot and come back.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We are very much looking forward to it. Joe, Tony, thank you guys both for joining us today. Like I said, we know the club's in good hands with you, Joe, working for you. We know that this club is in great hands, and we certainly can't wait to see it.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Yeah, thank you for the honor.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you guys. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Nice meeting you both again. And Joe, thank you for your kind words, for even though we worked for you. So thank you for enduring our bullheadedness. And Tony, thank you so much for your hard work and being willing to come on and join us.
I really appreciate you having me. Thank you.